Don't move. Officer Daniel Mercer's voice cut across the parking lot so sharply that even the conversations outside the Veterans Center seemed to disappear. Isaiah Brooks stopped exactly where he was, one hand resting beside the door of his dark blue SUV, the other hanging loose at his side. At 61, Isaiah had learned that silence could carry more strength than anger, and there was something in the officer's approach that told him anger would only make this moment worse. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the pavement as Mercer came closer, one hand hovering near his belt, his expression already hardened by a conclusion Isaiah had not been given the chance to understand. "Sir, I haven't done anything," Isaiah said calmly. Mercer looked him over, from his weathered brown shoes to the charcoal jacket buttoned neatly across his chest. "I'll decide that." A few feet away, Officer Emily Carter slowed her steps. She had arrived behind Mercer expecting a routine conversation, but something about the scene felt wrong. Isaiah wasn't running. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't threatening anyone. He was simply standing beside a vehicle with a small Veterans Center decal on the rear window. "Can you tell me what this is about?" Isaiah asked. His voice remained measured, almost unusually so. Mercer interpreted that calmness differently. "You asking the questions now?" Isaiah drew a slow breath. Somewhere behind them, the center's front door opened, and the faint sound of laughter drifted outside before fading again. Isaiah glanced toward it for half a second. Mercer noticed. "Eyes on me." Isaiah looked back. "They're on you, officer." It wasn't defiance. It was simply an answer. But Mercer stepped closer. Emily watched Isaiah's posture change almost imperceptibly. His shoulders settled. His feet became still. His breathing slowed. It was the reaction of someone who understood pressure far better than Mercer realized. "Daniel," Emily said quietly, "maybe we should establish what happened first." Mercer ignored her. "Hands where I can see them." Isaiah raised both hands without argument. "They're right here." A phone appeared near the Veterans Center. Entrance. Someone had started recording. Another person stopped beside the doorway. Mercer saw the growing audience, and instead of slowing down, his voice became firmer. "Turn around." Isaiah hesitated only long enough to ask, "Am I being detained?" That question changed Mercer's face. "Turn around." Isaiah could have argued. He could have raised his voice. He could have told Mercer exactly how many years he had spent serving the country represented by the flag above that building. He did none of those things. He turned around. Moments later, Isaiah was on the pavement, controlled and still, while Mercer secured his wrist behind him without any graphic struggle. "I'm not resisting," Isaiah said. 3 words. Calm. Clear. Emily stared at Mercer, then at Isaiah, and something in her expression shifted. As Mercer helped Isaiah sit upright, the edge of his charcoal jacket folded open. A small wooden presentation case slipped from an inside pocket and landed several feet away. Nobody spoke. Mercer stepped past it without looking down. Emily did. The case had opened just enough for a ribbon of pale blue fabric to catch the afternoon light. Isaiah saw it too. For the first time, something deeper than concern crossed his face. Not fear. Memory. Emily slowly walked toward the box, unaware that the man sitting quietly on that pavement had carried something beneath his coat that would change the meaning of everything she had just witnessed. 3 hours earlier, Isaiah Brooks had stood in the quiet kitchen of his modest brick home, watching morning sunlight move across a row of framed family photographs. At 61, he had built a life around routines most people would never notice. Coffee at 6:30, a walk through the neighborhood before breakfast, a phone call to his daughter Maya every Sunday, and every Thursday, a 12-mile drive to the Veterans Center, where he volunteered with men and women learning how to build ordinary lives after extraordinary years of service. That afternoon was different. On the kitchen table rested a small wooden presentation case Isaiah rarely opened. His daughter Maya stood across from him, studying his expression. "You should take it with you," she said. Isaiah gave her the faint smile she remembered from childhood, the one that appeared whenever he had already made up his mind. "They know who I am. That is not why I mean." Maya reached toward the case, but stopped before touching it. "Today matters." Isaiah looked down. His fingers rested against the polished wood for several seconds. There were memories inside that box that no ceremony could explain. Names, voices, young faces preserved in his mind exactly as they had been decades earlier. People sometimes saw a medal and imagined glory. Isaiah remembered responsibility. He remembered promises. He remembered the people who never came home to grow old. "I do not need a medal to remember them," he said quietly. Maya's expression softened. She had heard him say similar things before, but never asked who he meant by them. She understood that some doors in her father's past opened only when he was ready. Isaiah finally slipped the case into the inside pocket of his charcoal jacket. "Happy?" Maya smiled. "A little." 40 minutes later, his dark blue sport utility vehicle turned into the Veterans Center parking lot. The building was simple, 2 stories of aging red brick with an American flag moving gently above the entrance. Isaiah parked near the side walkway and remained behind the wheel for a moment. Across the lot, a young veteran struggled to carry several cardboard boxes toward the entrance. Isaiah stepped out immediately. "Need a hand?" The young man looked relieved. "Yes, sir. Thank you." Isaiah carried 2 boxes inside, without mentioning that his right shoulder still bothered him on cold mornings. People greeted him as he passed. Some called him Isaiah. Others called him Sergeant Brooks. He answered both with the same quiet nod. Nobody saluted. Nobody treated him like a celebrity. That was exactly how he preferred it. For nearly 2 hours, he helped organize donated supplies, spoke privately with a veteran searching for work, and listened more than he talked. By late afternoon, Isaiah returned to the parking lot alone. The temperature had dropped several degrees, and long shadows stretched between the vehicles. He reached his sport utility vehicle and unlocked the door. Then he heard a patrol car approaching. Isaiah glanced over his shoulder. The vehicle slowed. Behind the windshield, Officer Daniel Mercer was already watching him. Isaiah had lived long enough to recognize certain looks before a single word was spoken. He placed his keys visibly on the roof of the vehicle and waited. The patrol car stopped 20 feet away. Its door opened. Mercer stepped out, and before Isaiah knew what accusation was forming in the officer's mind, he understood one thing with uncomfortable certainty. Daniel Mercer had already decided that something about him did not belong there. Mercer left the patrol car with the slow confidence of a man who believed the situation had already explained itself. Isaiah remained beside his sport utility vehicle, his keys resting plainly on the roof where Mercer could see them. The afternoon traffic moved beyond the parking lot, ordinary and distant, while the American flag above the Veterans Center shifted softly in the breeze. "Is this your vehicle?" Mercer asked. "Yes, officer," Isaiah replied. "Registration is in the glove compartment. My identification is in my wallet." Mercer did not ask for either. His eyes moved from Isaiah to the building, then back to the vehicle. "What are you doing here?" Isaiah glanced toward the entrance. "I volunteer here every Thursday." Mercer gave a short, humorless smile. "That was not what I asked." Isaiah studied him for a moment. "Then I am not sure what you are asking." The answer was calm, but Mercer heard challenge where there was none. He stepped closer. "We receive a report about a suspicious person near vehicles in this lot." Isaiah looked around at the nearly empty parking spaces. "Who reported me?" "You do not need to know that." "Was a crime reported?" Mercer paused. "I'm asking the questions." Isaiah nodded once. "Then ask them." 10 yards away, the Veterans Center door opened. A young man, carrying an empty cardboard box, noticed the 2 men and stopped. Mercer saw him watching. "Keep moving," he called. The young man hesitated before disappearing inside. Isaiah's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. He had spent decades learning the difference between authority and control. Authority did not fear questions. Control often did. A second patrol car entered the lot. Officer Emily Carter parked several spaces away and approached with a cautious expression. "What do we have?" she asked. Mercer answered without looking at her. "Possible suspicious activity." Emily looked at Isaiah, then at the keys on the roof. "Any complainant?" "I am handling it." Isaiah spoke quietly. "Officer Carter, I've offered identification and registration. Emily turned toward Mercer. Did you check them? His jaw tightened. Not yet. Silence settled between them. Somewhere inside the center, a door closed. Mercer pointed toward Isaiah's jacket. Identification. Slowly, Isaiah reached toward the inside pocket, then stopped when Mercer immediately stiffened. My wallet is inside my jacket, Isaiah explained. Then keep your hands where I can see them. Isaiah lowered his hand. You asked for identification, and I told you not to make sudden movements. Emily watched the exchange carefully. The contradiction was obvious. Isaiah understood it too. He had been placed inside a conversation where every answer could be treated as resistance, and every movement could become suspicion. Still, he refused to surrender his composure. Officer Mercer, he said, I will cooperate with any lawful request. Tell me exactly what you want me to do. Mercer stepped within several feet of him. You think because you speak calmly, you are in charge here? Isaiah's gaze remained steady. No, I think speaking calmly is how two adults prevent a misunderstanding from becoming something worse. That should have lowered the temperature. Instead, Mercer heard something else. Confidence. And confidence from Isaiah seemed to irritate him more than anger would have. Emily noticed Mercer's shoulders tighten. Daniel, she said, we can verify his information and clear this up. Mercer ignored her. Step away from the vehicle. Isaiah obeyed. Turn around. Isaiah looked directly at him. Am I being detained? The parking lot seemed to become strangely quiet. Mercer stared at Isaiah as though the question itself had crossed the line. Then he moved closer and said the words Isaiah had hoped he would not hear. Do not make me tell you again. Isaiah held Mercer's gaze for one quiet second, then turned exactly as instructed. His hands remained visible. His movements were deliberate. Nothing about him suggested panic. Yet Emily noticed something change in the older man's posture. His shoulders settled. His breathing became slower. His feet shifted naturally into balance before he seemed to catch himself and relax again. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Emily had spent enough years around trained officers and former service members to recognize practiced discipline when she saw it. Mercer noticed the movement too, but interpreted it differently. What was that? He demanded. Isaiah looked over his shoulder. What was what? That stance. Isaiah paused. Habit. Mercer stepped closer. From what? Isaiah could have answered. He could have told him about years measured in deployments instead of calendars, about mornings that began before sunrise and nights when sleep came in fragments. He could have explained why he automatically noticed exits, why his eyes tracked hands before faces, why even at 61 his body remembered lessons his mind sometimes wished it could forget. Instead, he said a long time ago. Mercer reached for Isaiah's arm. Every instinct Isaiah had spent decades mastering awakened at once. His weight shifted. His muscles tightened. His mind calculated distance without permission. One step, one turn, one movement would have changed everything. Then Isaiah saw the small red light on Mercer's body camera. He saw Emily standing several feet away. Beyond her, through the glass doors of the Veterans Center, he saw two young volunteers watching. One of them could not have been older than 17. Isaiah exhaled. His hands opened. He chose stillness. I am cooperating, he said. Mercer directed him away from the vehicle. Isaiah followed every instruction. Daniel, Emily said, more firmly now, he is cooperating. Mercer did not answer. The tension had become less about information and more about who controlled the moment. Isaiah understood that, and the understanding made him quieter. I am not resisting, he said clearly. Mercer secured Isaiah's wrists behind him and guided him toward a seated position on the pavement without any further struggle. The metal cuffs clicked shut. That small sound traveled farther than it should have. The Veterans Center door opened again. 3 people stood outside now. One raised a phone. Another stared in disbelief. Isaiah kept his eyes forward. He had worn uniforms in places where fear could spread through a room faster than smoke. He had learned there that dignity was not something another person could hand you, and it was not something they could easily take away. Mercer began speaking into his radio. Emily crouched several feet from Isaiah. Are you all right, sir? Isaiah nodded. I am fine. His voice was steady, but his eyes moved toward the building. Please tell them to stay inside. I do not want anyone making this worse. Emily looked at the people gathering near the entrance. Even now, he was thinking about everyone except himself. Mercer finished his radio call and turned back. You should have answered the questions the first time. Isaiah looked up at him. I answered every question you asked. Mercer opened his mouth, but Emily spoke first. Daniel, we need to verify his identification. Mercer finally reached toward Isaiah's jacket. My wallet is in the inside right pocket, Isaiah said. As Mercer carefully opened the edge of the charcoal jacket, something shifted from his second inner pocket. A small polished wooden case slipped free, struck the pavement with a quiet tap, and slid several feet away. The lid opened slightly. Mercer barely glanced at it before stepping past. Emily did not. A narrow strip of pale blue ribbon caught the sunlight. Isaiah turned his head toward the case, and for the first time since Mercer approached him, his calm expression changed. Emily walked toward it slowly. She bent down. Then she saw what was inside. Emily stared into the wooden case without speaking. Resting against dark blue velvet was a star suspended beneath a pale blue ribbon scattered with white stars. She had seen photographs of it during academy training, at military ceremonies, and in history books, but never this close. For a moment, the noise of the parking lot seemed to disappear. Daniel, she said quietly. Mercer was still checking Isaiah's wallet. What? Daniel, you need to see this. Something in her voice finally made him turn. Emily did not lift the metal from its case. She simply held the open box carefully in both hands. Mercer looked at it, frowned, then looked toward Isaiah. What is that supposed to be? Emily's eyes widened slightly. You seriously do not recognize it? Isaiah remained seated on the pavement, his hands still secured behind him. His attention was not on Mercer. It was on the metal. The expression on his face was different now, distant and heavy, as though the small piece of metal had opened a door to somewhere far beyond that parking lot. One of the veterans, standing near the entrance, took several slow steps forward. He was an older man with silver hair and a faded army cap. The moment he saw the ribbon, he stopped. Sergeant Brooks, he called. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly. Stay back, Frank, he answered. Everything is under control. Frank looked from Isaiah to Mercer, then to Emily holding the case. His face changed. You gotta be kidding me. More people appeared behind him, but Isaiah shook his head. Nobody comes closer. Please. They listened. Mercer finally pulled Isaiah's driver's license from the wallet. Isaiah Brooks, he read aloud. Emily looked at the metal again. The name suddenly seemed important in a way she could not explain. Run it, Mercer said. Emily stared at him. We should remove the cuffs first. We verify before we do anything. Verify what? She asked. His identity is in your hand. Mercer lowered his voice. Do not undermine me in front of everyone. Emily's expression hardened. I'm trying to keep this from getting worse. Before Mercer could answer, the radio on his shoulder came alive. Dispatch confirmed the sport utility vehicle was registered to Isaiah Brooks at his home address. No stolen vehicle report. No active warrant. Nothing connecting him to a crime. Mercer remained silent. Isaiah looked toward him. May I stand now? Mercer hesitated. That hesitation said more than any answer could have. Emily carefully closed the wooden case and carried it toward Isaiah. Sir, I believe this belongs to you. Isaiah looked at the box but did not take it. He could not with his hands behind him. Emily realized that immediately. An embarrassment crossed her face. She placed the case gently on the hood of the sport utility vehicle instead. I am sorry, she said. Isaiah nodded once. Thank you for picking it up. There was no triumph in his voice. No satisfaction. Only weariness. Frank remained near the entrance, watching. Then he noticed something beyond the parking lot and straightened. A black department sport utility vehicle had turned off the main road. It entered quickly, then slowed as it approached the gathering crowd. Emily recognized it immediately. Captain Hayes, she whispered. Mercer looked toward the vehicle, and some of the certainty disappeared from his face. The driver's door opened. Robert Hayes stepped out, took one look at the people gathered outside the Veterans Center, then saw Isaiah seated on the pavement. His expression froze. His eyes moved to the wooden case resting on the hood. For several seconds, Hayes did not say a word. Then he looked directly at Mercer. "Officer," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Tell me those cuffs are not on the man I think they are." Captain Robert Hayes did not wait for an explanation. His eyes moved from Isaiah to Mercer, then to the wooden case resting on the hood of the sport utility vehicle. The color drained from his expression. "Remove the cuffs," Hayes said. Mercer straightened. "Captain, I was responding to suspicious activity, and I have not completed the investigation." Hayes looked at Emily. "Officer Carter, has any crime been established?" Emily answered immediately. "No, sir. Dispatch confirmed the vehicle belongs to Mr. Brooks. There are no active warrants, and we have not identified a complainant alleging that he committed a crime." Hayes turned back to Mercer, then removed the cuffs. This time, there was no hesitation. Mercer released Isaiah, and Isaiah slowly stood, rolling his shoulders once before smoothing the front of his charcoal jacket. He did not glare at Mercer. He did not demand an apology. He simply looked toward the wooden case. Hayes stepped closer to him. "Isaiah Brooks?" Isaiah met his eyes. "Yes, Captain." Hayes seemed to search his face, connecting the man standing before him with a name he had known for years. "I served at Fort Campbell before joining the department," Hayes said quietly. "I heard your story when I was 23 years old." Isaiah's expression remained restrained. "Then you heard somebody else's version of it." Hayes almost smiled, but the moment was too heavy. Behind them, Frank removed his faded army cap. Another veteran emerged from the center and recognized what was happening. Then another. Nobody shouted. Nobody confronted Mercer. They simply stood straighter. Frank raised his hand in a slow salute. A woman near the doorway followed. Then a younger veteran beside her did the same. Within seconds, nearly everyone outside the center was standing in silence, facing Isaiah. Mercer looked around, confused by a respect he had not known existed 5 minutes earlier. Emily opened the wooden case again and held it where Hayes could see. The pale blue ribbon caught the fading sunlight. Hayes drew a breath. "Medal of Honor," he said. The words were barely louder than the wind, but Mercer heard every syllable. His eyes dropped to the medal, then to Isaiah, then back again. The confidence that had shaped every question he asked disappeared. "You received that?" Mercer asked. Isaiah looked at him for a long moment. "Yes." Nothing more. No rank. No list of accomplishments. No demand that Mercer understand what the medal meant. Hayes turned toward Mercer. "Do you understand what you are looking at?" Mercer swallowed. "Yes, sir." Isaiah shook his head gently. "No, Captain. That is not the question." Everyone looked toward him. Isaiah nodded toward the medal. "That tells him something about my past. It does not tell him whether what happened here was right." Hayes became still. Isaiah continued, his voice calm. "If that box had stayed in my jacket, would anything about the last 10 minutes be different?" Mercer had no answer. Isaiah looked toward the people saluting him and lowered his eyes. "Please," he said softly, "you can put your hands down." Frank lowered his salute first. The others followed. Isaiah walked to the hood, closed the wooden case, and rested his palm on it. Mercer watched him carefully, perhaps expecting anger now that the balance of the moment had changed. None came. Isaiah only said, "This medal is not why I deserve to be heard." The parking lot fell silent again, but this silence was different. Mercer had finally seen the medal. Everyone else was beginning to see the man. Isaiah kept his hand on the wooden case as the last salute disappeared and the parking lot slowly found its breath again. Mercer stood several feet away, no longer looking at Isaiah as a suspicious stranger, but Isaiah could see the dangerous lesson beginning to form in the officer's mind. Mercer was sorry because he had discovered who Isaiah was. That was not the lesson Isaiah wanted him to learn. Captain Hayes glanced at the medal and spoke quietly. "There are people in uniform who know your citation by heart." Isaiah looked toward him. "Then they know the shortest version." Frank stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "You never tell anybody the rest." Isaiah gave him a tired smile. "Because the rest belongs to men who are not standing here." Emily listened without interrupting. The evening light had softened, turning the windows of the veterans center gold. Isaiah opened the case and studied the metal for several seconds. People see this and think it represents one man doing something extraordinary, he said. That is not how I remember it. His thumb rested against the edge of the velvet. I remember young men trusting each other when everything around us was uncertain. I remember people doing their jobs when nobody was watching. I remember promises we made about getting one another home. His voice slowed. Some of us did. Nobody asked him to explain further. They did not need to. Hayes lowered his eyes. Mercer shifted his weight. Mr. Brooks, Mercer began, if I had known who you were, I would have handled this differently. Isaiah closed the case. The click sounded small, but Mercer immediately understood that he had said the wrong thing. That is exactly the problem, Isaiah replied. Mercer stared at him. Isaiah's voice remained calm. You should not have needed to know who I was. Emily looked toward Mercer, then back to Isaiah. There was no verified crime, she said quietly. Isaiah nodded. And suppose I had never served. Suppose I worked at the grocery store down the street. Suppose I was unemployed. Suppose that medal was nothing but an old photograph in my pocket. Why I have deserved less patience. Mercer opened his mouth, but no answer came. Isaiah looked toward the Veterans Center entrance. There are people who walk through those doors carrying stories nobody can see. Some have medals. Most do not. Their dignity does not depend on whether somebody important recognizes their name. Hayes folded his arms, his expression becoming more official. Officer Carter, I want your body camera preserved. Officer Mercer, yours as well. Dispatch audio, vehicle camera footage, and the original call that brought you here. Everything. Mercer looked at him sharply. Captain, this was a misunderstanding. Isaiah turned toward him. Maybe it was. For the first time, there was something almost sad in his expression. But misunderstandings have beginnings. I want to know what this one began with. Emily hesitated, then spoke. Captain, there is something you need to know. Mercer looked at her. Emily continued anyway. Mr. Brooks offered identification before I arrived. When I got here, he was cooperating. I suggested we verify his information before escalating the stop. The silence returned. Mercer stared at his partner, as if her words had changed the ground beneath him. Hayes nodded once. Put that in your report exactly as you remember it. Yes, sir. Isaiah picked up the wooden case and slipped it carefully back inside his jacket. Captain Hayes, I do not want special treatment. Hayes met his gaze. What do you want? Isaiah looked at Mercer, then at Emily, then toward the people watching from the Veterans Center. The same thing I wanted before anyone saw the medal. He paused. The truth. Hayes reached for his radio, but Emily was already looking toward Mercer's patrol car, remembering another detail that had seemed insignificant minutes earlier. The dispatch call, the vague description, the absence of a complainant. And suddenly she wondered whether this encounter had truly started that afternoon, or whether Daniel Mercer had brought something much older into the parking lot with him. By sunset, the question was no longer whether Isaiah Brooks had done anything wrong. The question was how many times Daniel Mercer had made someone else prove they belonged before he treated them as if they did. Captain Hayes ordered both patrol vehicles left untouched until their recordings were secured, then asked Emily to remain at the Veterans Center while a supervisor collected statements. Mercer stood beside his cruiser, unusually quiet, watching procedure replace the certainty he had carried into the parking lot. Isaiah could have gone home. Instead, he stayed. Not because he wanted revenge, but because he had spent too much of his life understanding what happened when good people decided that uncomfortable truths belonged to someone else. The first answer arrived from dispatch. The original caller had reported a man checking vehicle doors near the far end of the parking lot. No race had been provided. No clothing description matched Isaiah. More importantly, the reported activity had occurred almost 20 minutes before Mercer arrived. Emily read the dispatch summary twice. Then why did he focus on Mr. Brooks? She asked. Hayes did not answer. He did not need to. The body camera footage would answer for him. By the next morning, Internal Affairs had opened a formal review. Investigators examined Mercer's recording, Emily's recording, dispatch audio, and the video captured by witnesses outside the center. Then they pulled earlier complaints. One file became 3. 3 became 7. Not every complaint had been sustained. Some involved incomplete evidence. Others have been dismissed after conflicting accounts. But the language inside them was difficult to ignore. Unnecessary suspicion. Escalation without clear cause. Citizens describing the same feeling Isaiah had experienced, that the conclusion had arrived before the questions. 2 complaints involved black drivers stopped under circumstances supervisors had previously called questionable. Another involved a black college student questioned outside his own apartment building. Individually, Mercer had explained each encounter away. Together, they formed something harder to dismiss. Emily sat across from an investigator 2 days later and stared at her folded hands. "I should have spoken sooner," she said. "When?" the investigator asked. Emily thought about the parking lot, but then shook her head. "Before Thursday." She explained that she had seen smaller moments during previous shifts. Nothing dramatic. A tone, an assumption, a willingness to give one person the benefit of the doubt while demanding another person earn it. She had noticed. She had rationalized. She had stayed quiet. Across town, Isaiah sat at his kitchen table while Maya poured coffee into 2 mugs. The wooden case rested between them. "They're saying your metal changed everything," Maya said. Isaiah looked toward the morning light beyond the window. "No." He turned the case slowly with one hand. "The cameras changed what they could deny." Maya sat across from him. "Are you angry?" Isaiah considered the question. "Yes." She seemed surprised by the honesty. "But anger is not a destination." He closed his hand over the case. "If this becomes a story about one decorated veteran and one officer, everyone gets to pretend the problem began and ended in that parking lot." 3 weeks later, Mercer entered the department review room expecting to defend a single encounter. Instead, 7 folders were arranged across the table. Captain Hayes sat beside an internal affairs commander. Emily was already there. Mercer stopped at the doorway. His eyes moved from one folder to the next. Then he understood. The metal had not destroyed his career. Isaiah had not destroyed his career. The past had simply been given a room, a table, and finally, enough witnesses to speak. The review room was silent when Daniel Mercer finally took his seat. 7 folders rested across the table, each carrying a name, a date, and a moment that someone had once tried to explain but could not prove. Now, those moments were no longer standing alone. Captain Robert Hayes listened as the Internal Affairs Commander summarized the findings. Several earlier complaints remained inconclusive, but the pattern was clear enough to demand consequences. Mercer had repeatedly allowed assumptions to shape encounters before facts did, and on that Thursday afternoon, 2 body cameras and several witnesses had captured the cost of that habit. Emily Carter testified truthfully. She described Isaiah's cooperation, his offer to provide identification, and the moment she realized Mercer was responding not to what Isaiah had done, but to what Mercer believed about him. When the review ended, Mercer was removed from street duty, pending final disciplinary action and mandatory departmental proceedings. Weeks later, the department announced that he would no longer serve as a patrol officer. Yet for Isaiah, the most important moment came afterward. He had been invited to speak during a community accountability meeting at the Veterans Center, the same red brick building where everything had begun. Residents filled the folding chairs. Veterans stood along the back wall. Emily sat near the aisle. Hayes stood beside the door. Mercer had requested permission to attend, and Isaiah had agreed. When Isaiah entered, nobody saluted this time. He had asked him not to. He walked to the front, carrying the small wooden case in one hand. Mercer watched him approach the table. "Mr. Brooks," he said when Isaiah stopped nearby, "I owe you an apology." Isaiah waited. Mercer swallowed. "I treated you as suspicious before I had facts. When I found out about your service, I realized how badly I had judged you." Isaiah placed the wooden case on the table. "You are still missing part of it." Mercer looked confused. Isaiah opened the case. The Medal of Honor rested beneath the lights, quiet and unmistakable. Every eye in the room moved toward it. "This proves something I did for my country," Isaiah said. Then he gently closed the lid. "It should never have been required to prove I deserve dignity in it." Nobody moved. Mercer lowered his eyes. Isaiah continued, "If I had been a mechanic, a teacher, a janitor, or a man looking for work, the facts in that parking lot would have been exactly the same. I was beside my own vehicle. I answered your questions. I offered identification. The medal changed what you thought of me. It did not change what happened. Mercer nodded slowly. I understand. Isaiah studied him. I hope someday you do. There was no cruelty in the words. That made them heavier. Isaiah turned toward Emily. She had requested additional training and had begun speaking openly inside the department about the cost of remaining silent when another officer crossed the line. She was not celebrated as a hero. She did not want to be. She had simply decided that next time, she would speak sooner. After the meeting, Isaiah drove home through the fading evening light. Maya was waiting in the kitchen when he arrived. He placed the wooden case back inside the drawer where it had spent most of the previous decade. "You're putting it away again?" she asked. Isaiah smiled. "It already did its job." Maya looked at him. "Which job?" Isaiah closed the drawer, reminding people that honor is not something you can always see. Outside, the neighborhood settled into darkness. The medal remained hidden inside the house, but the lesson traveled far beyond it. A uniform could show authority. A medal could show sacrifice. Neither could measure the worth of the person standing in front of you. Isaiah Brooks had deserved dignity before anyone knew his name, before anyone learned his history, and long before a pale blue ribbon forced them to finally look.